Hey everybody, it is Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Osh Wanunu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to on this Giving Tuesday after Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday, and here we are. We meet again, Giving Tuesday.
Moshe, you set me up perfectly for my annual Giving Tuesday hot take.
Totally by accident there, Jill. I did not see this one coming. Go ahead.
Okay, well, first, before I get into my hot take, a quick reminder, Giving Tuesday is a day to give to your favorite charity. A lot of them have matching of donations, so a really good day to give back after you spent a lot of money over the weekend.
Yeah, in some cases, some charities actually have donors that'll match up to $200,000, even $1 million on all donations given today. So if you haven't donated already, please consider it. But Jill, I know you have thoughts on Giving Tuesday.
Moshe, I do have thoughts. And mostly it's that Giving Tuesday should be the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Because I think by now, most of us are tapped out. As you said, Moshe, we've already had Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday. Whereas if we did it the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, everyone's in a good mood. They've got a lot of money. They're feeling festive. They're excited for the holiday. So, my suggestion for the Giving Tuesday people, bump it up a week.
I think that's a great thought. I think I endorsed it last year as well. I don't know who the Giving Tuesday people are, but if the Giving Tuesday people are listening, if you're listening, the Giving Tuesday gods, move it up before everyone buys the appliances and the apparel and the cosmetics and everything else to the Tuesday going in to Thanksgiving. But nonetheless, this is your opportunity to donate today if you don't donate all year long. So definitely look into causes that you believe in. There's also websites you can check out there to ensure that the charities are spending money wisely, which is also important. Jill, just looking back to Cyber Monday, we'll talk about it a bit later in the podcast, but I had the chance yesterday to head down to an Amazon fulfillment facility for Cyber Monday, and I have lived to tell the story. 1 million square feet, 28 football fields. And I almost accidentally hit a cord that would have shut down shipping part of the facility for a second, but thankfully I didn't pull the wire too hard. I'll explain.
Oh, I saw the video.
I leaned up against it. I didn't actually. I'm not like a 5-year-old. I didn't try to pull anything, but I leaned up against a cord, and somebody was like, "Moshe, just don't get too close to that."
Moshe, I actually was watching it on Instagram and laughing out loud because it was just, I know you, and it was sort of just perfect. It was so typical. It was great.
Jill, I have to say, more fun than expected. If you guys haven't caught the clips yet on Instagram.
All right, let's get to some news here. An update to that big political story we mentioned yesterday. President Biden announcing that he pardoned his son Hunter from drug and tax evasion charges and for anything else that he did in the last decade. Well, a number of Democrats are now coming out and saying that the move could tarnish his legacy and worse, plus what this could mean for Trump's pardons.
Yeah, I don't think that the Sunday between Small Business Saturday and Cyber Monday has a name, so we can call it Pardon the Sunday now. Does that work?
At least every 4 years, Moshe.
Once every 4 years, the Pardon Sunday after Thanksgiving.
Meanwhile, in the Middle East, Israeli officials confirmed that an American-Israeli hostage that was believed to be alive was actually killed last fall during the October 7th terror attack. And now President-elect Trump is issuing an ultimatum to Hamas. Staying in the region to an update on the advancement of rebel groups in Syria, Iranian-backed forces have now joined the fight to support the government. And we're continuing to watch some of Trump's more controversial cabinet picks. A bombshell report is out about Secretary of Defense nominee Pete Hegseth, revealing that he was forced to step down from previous jobs for sexual and personal misconduct. And as we await final spending numbers for Cyber Monday, Moshe gives us an inside look at an Amazon facility working hard to ship you packages. He gives us the scoop.
Including, Jill, just the number of robots working in the facility. It was fascinating to watch.
Plus an egg recall at Costco. And Elton John reveals that he's lost his eyesight. And finally, Oxford Dictionary announces its word of the year. And Moshe, I think it is very apropos for 2024.
They have gone with a different word than dictionary.com, and they have gone with a different word than the dictionary.com word of the year that was publicized last week.
Plus, Moshe is on this day in history.
Your clue, the song lyrics mention Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, and Arthur Fonzarelli.
I know.
Another SNL song premiere on this day in history. Tell your friend Veronica to tune in to the end of the podcast.
This one, by the way, is not raunchy. Doesn't have hidden raunchy lyrics at the end. No. This one is good old-fashioned fun. clean fun. Okay, to our top story. Let's start with the fallout from President Biden's bombshell announcement Sunday night that he has pardoned his son Hunter, who was facing federal gun and tax evasion charges. This after Biden insisted repeatedly for months that he would not use his executive powers to help his son and keep him out of prison. There have been strong reactions on both sides of the aisle, including many Democrats who have been critical of the move, especially as they have tried to contrast themselves with Donald Trump and Republicans as the party of rule of law. NBC News revealed that Biden had been considering this since Hunter was convicted on federal gun charges in June. But NBC reports that the Biden team decided that he would lie about wanting to do so publicly so that it wouldn't affect the outcome of the election. Some Democrats are saying the flip-flop is hypocritical. It hurts the party. Even more are saying his statement calling into question the fairness of the justice system towards his son contributes to the public's distrust in institutions. Colorado's Democratic Senator Michael Bennet posted on X. He said Biden's decision, quote, further erodes Americans' faith that the justice system is fair and equal for all. Another Democratic senator from Michigan, Gary Peters, called Biden's decision wrong, saying that it, quote, erodes trust in our government and emboldens others to bend justice to suit their interests. Colorado's Democratic governor, Jared Polis, said that he understood why, as a father, Biden made the decision, but that, quote, this is a bad precedent that could be abused by later presidents and will sadly tarnish his reputation. Former Representative from Illinois, Joe Walsh, who is an anti-Trump Republican and has supported Biden, had this to say.
This just furthers the cynicism that people have about politics, and that cynicism strengthens Trump, because Trump can just say, I'm not a unique threat. Everybody does this. If I do something for my kid, my son-in-law, whatever, look, Joe Biden does the same thing. I get it, but this was a selfish move by Biden, which politically only strengthens Trump. It's just deflating.
So those are the critics. Meanwhile, most Democrats do agree with Biden that his son was targeted just for being part of the first family. Obama's former attorney general, Eric Holder, said the pardon was warranted because he doesn't think any U.S. attorney would have actually charged the Hunter Biden case, given the facts. And in the same tweet, Holder reverted people's attention back to Trump's recent pick for director of FBI, Kash Patel, saying he is not qualified to lead the law enforcement agency, which he called a, quote, vastly more important question.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is not surprising to hear Republicans critical of Biden here. What was surprising is that you are getting some Democrats who are like, I don't love this move, even though the majority of Democrats are applauding Biden's move here, knowing that Republicans were going to spend potentially the next 4 years continuing to investigate Hunter Biden, as well as former President Biden. One Democratic representative from California, Sidney Kamlager Dove, said, in the words of Lizzo, it's about damn time in terms of the Hunter Biden pardon. And another Democratic House member said, spare me the fake outrage, folks. Trump not only pardoned Charles Kushner, the father of Jared Kushner, he made him the effing ambassador to France. We told you about that over the weekend. So some Democrats much more vocal and very pointed in their language here, saying, based in contrast to what Trump has done, this isn't much. At the same time, it does come after, as you mentioned, Jill, Biden said repeatedly, the White House said repeatedly, we're not even thinking about it. There's no way we would do this. So many people are saying, why did you bother saying that for the past year? I think there's an obvious reason, politics and the election. As you mentioned, NBC reported that he's actually been actively considering it, and they made a concerted decision to lie about it for 6 months until the election was over before they admitted that he was actually considering pardoning Hunter Biden here. At the same time, he is now the third president in the past 25 years to pardon a family member. Bill Clinton pardoned his half-brother Roger for drug crimes back as he was leaving office in 2001. Then the aforementioned Trump pardon of Charles Kushner, Jared's father, for tax evasion and financial crimes. And then over the weekend, now naming him 4 years after pardoning him, the ambassador to France. One notable difference here, both Roger Clinton and Charles Kushner served prison time, served their sentence, and then got the pardon. The Biden decision here to pardon his son happens before he served a single day in jail here. For crimes, by the way, we should note that Hunter admitted that he committed. One major issue for Democrats here is Biden's statement. That he makes a point, he didn't have to go here, but he went there in the statement of criticizing the justice system, saying it's unfairly targeting his son. It sounds a lot like Trump's rhetoric, Republican rhetoric that Democrats have criticized, saying that they're undermining the public trust in the judicial system. And now you have Biden doing that after being critical of Trump for doing it. Trump has said that the system has been weaponized against him, etc. Biden has been a defender of the justice system, saying he believes in the justice system. And yet he says that now he believes politics has infected the process and it led to a miscarriage of justice here. Notable, by the way, both the Trump prosecutions, federal prosecutions, as well as the Hunter Biden one were handled by separate special counsels here. So they tried to keep it separate, specifically appointed to protect the cases from partisan politics. Nonetheless, you had, in this case, Biden saying, no, I don't believe that Hunter Biden owning a gun for 10 days and not committing a crime with it and lying on the application would have been prosecuted. And I think he has a good case for that. As well as the tax evasion case. If you pay back taxes after evading them, you typically don't serve prison time, but his last name is Biden. So President Biden felt that. That's the same thing, by the way, we should mention. Trump has said about the case in New York, the Stormy Daniels case, that wouldn't have been prosecuted unless his name was Donald Trump. So nonetheless, this is all very interesting, especially against the backdrop here of Trump coming in. And he has made clear that among his first moves is going to be some big pardons, including for potentially here several hundred of the individuals convicted related to January 6th. Trump has mentioned that he would pardon them, that he believes he calls them hostages, not convicts or criminals or rioters or all the various words that have been used. He calls them hostages, people who were part of those riots on January 6, 2021. So indication here that this only reinforces Trump's decision to pardon the January 6th rioters, everyone involved in it. Even though he said it, now he looks at it, and that was his first response to Biden last night. And that was his first response to Biden. And that was his first response to Biden on Sunday night, saying, what about those guys? So for some of the Democrats critical here, they thought they had the moral high ground as Biden didn't pardon Hunter until the decision came out on Sunday night.
Notably, too, a lot of people are pointing out the terms of the pardon. President Biden released his statement Sunday night, and alongside it, text of the executive order. It revealed that the pardon for his son covers a sweeping 11-year time period, shielding Hunter Biden from more than just the gun and tax charges. This means that prosecutors from Trump's Justice Department or otherwise can't charge him with any federal crimes committed from the beginning of 2014 to the end of 2024. Republicans have jumped on this, saying that the unlimited 11-year pardon must mean that the Bidens are hiding something and that Hunter must have committed more crimes during that time period that his father is trying to protect him from. Many have pointed out that Hunter Biden joined the board of the Ukrainian energy company Burisma in 2014, and Republicans have zeroed in on his dealings in Ukraine, claiming that they were corrupt because his father was vice president at the time. They even tried to impeach President Biden over the matter in 2023 with the authorization of a House inquiry that really didn't amount to anything.
So a number of folks here are saying that the broad pardon is suspicious, that basically 11 years, no matter what Hunter Biden did, beyond the things that were prosecuted recently, is now covered by this federal pardon. The Republican from Kentucky, James Comer, who oversaw the Hunter Biden investigation over in the U.S. House, says that the charges Hunter faced were just the tip of the iceberg in the blatant corruption that President Biden and the Biden crime family have lied about. So the 11-year pardon, very broad here. Watch for something. Some people are suspecting, Jill, that President Biden may also pardon his brother, James Biden. who worked with Hunter Biden. Whether that comes in the final hours on January 20th is TBD right now. And I haven't seen questions explicitly asked to the White House on that yet, though, again, we did watch those questions asked for last year about Hunter Biden. They said no until they said yes. So look for that because, of course, Republicans have tried to target various Biden family financial dealings while Biden was vice president under Obama. And then thereafter, some background here on pardons, just for those of you asking, why do we have this? Well, presidents have pretty unlimited pardon power. It goes back to the Constitution, which was inspired for it. The founders were inspired by the King of England. That was an authority the King of England had going back centuries, the ability to pardon people. So ultimately here, the founding fathers who wrote the Constitution put it into the Constitution that presidents should have pardoning authority. There was a whole debate 250 years ago about whether there should be any limits on it. But so far, ultimately, even family members, as I mentioned up top, there's no exception there. Presidents have pretty broad authority. Remember, one of the more infamous pardons of all time, Gerald Ford, who became president and pardoned Richard Nixon for any crimes he committed, even though he hadn't been charged yet in federal crimes coming out of his resignation. So there's some interesting examples through history of just how broad this power is.
All right, switching gears, a renewed focus on the war in the Middle East after the U.S. helped to broker a ceasefire deal in Lebanon between Israel and the Iranian-backed terrorist group Hezbollah last month. There's more pressure now to negotiate a deal between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, the hope being to get the more than 100 hostages back home to Israel after they were kidnapped and in many cases injured or killed during the October 7th attacks. The Biden administration has been ramping up last-ditch efforts to restart talks between Israel and Hamas, but the administration has said that Hamas has been unwilling to negotiate. Yesterday, President-elect Trump weighed in on his social media platform, Truth Social, saying, quote, "There will be all hell to pay," that last part in all caps, in the Middle East if the hostages are not released prior to his inauguration in January. Trump's comments came hours after Israeli-American hostage Omer Neutra was confirmed to have been killed by Hamas on October 7th of 2023. Until yesterday, it was believed that Omer was alive, but the Israeli military confirmed that he was actually killed on the day of the attack and that Hamas was holding his body in Gaza. The 21-year-old had been doing military service in Israel. His parents, Orna and Ronan, live in New York, actually pretty close to where I live on Long Island, and became some of the most high-profile advocates to try to free the hostages here in the U.S. They have spoken to President Biden, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and addressed the Republican National Convention. I was able to interview them 2 weeks ago for the Mo News interview podcast. And at the time, they said that they were really hopeful that a new Trump administration could help usher in a hostage ceasefire deal. Omer was one of 7 Americans held by Hamas. Now only 3 of the 7 Americans are believed to be alive. There are still about 100 other hostages being held in the Gaza Strip. About a third are believed to still be alive after more than 400 days in captivity. The last temporary ceasefire in Gaza was November 2023, so about a year ago, when 105 hostages were released in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners.
It comes as there was also a hostage video released over the holiday weekend. The video featured Idan Alexander, another American-Israeli hostage, showing him pleading with the Israeli prime minister and with President-elect Trump. Now, Hamas has put out these videos over the last year, viewed as propaganda, cruel propaganda, forcing these hostages underground, being held now for more than a year, to be speaking from scripts, trying to push their agenda. Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, was on CBS over the weekend talking about the video, and another video of Gazans fighting to get food. It's just the humanitarian crisis continues there as Hamas and other criminal gangs in Gaza continue to intercept aid as it comes into Gaza. He said that there has been good coordination between the Biden teams and the Trump teams on all things happening in the Middle East. The Biden team has shown optimism that Hamas is starting to feel pressure here, especially as Hezbollah has come to an agreement. Iran is busy with its own business, and the Hamas leadership has been depleted, especially over the last couple months.
I do think that Hamas is feeling the pressure. They're feeling the pressure because one of their main partners in crime here, Hezbollah, has now cut a ceasefire deal, and they thought that Hezbollah would be with them till the end. They're feeling the pressure, of course, because their top leader, Sinwar, has been killed. So they may be looking anew at the possibility of getting a ceasefire and hostage deal, and we are working actively with all of the key players in the region, including Israel and Turkey and Qatar and Egypt, to try to bring that about in the coming days.
Jill, it's going to be interesting to watch the rhetoric here from Trump. You know, for the Biden officials, it's very much like, we want this to come to a conclusion. We are urging Hamas to take a deal. Then you have Trump coming in here with, there will be all hell to pay if you don't give up all the hostages immediately, effectively threatening military action, direct military action against Gaza and Hamas. We should note that Sarah Netanyahu, who is the prime minister's wife, along with their son Yair, were seated with Trump this week for a meal at Mar-a-Lago. He's been hosting a lot of foreign dignitaries, officials over the last couple of weeks there at Mar-a-Lago. And so the feeling is that coming into this, a lot of countries are trying to send a message here. Leaders are trying to send a message to Trump. Trump's trying to send a message to them. And so that will be notable to watch, along with whether the ceasefire can hold here between Israel and Hezbollah. We told you about it last week. There have been a number of violations of the ceasefire from both parties here. Hezbollah moving weapons, the Israelis then bombing Hezbollah then firing mortar shells into Israel at IDF positions, a lot of finger pointing. But so far, for the most part, the ceasefire is held here in week one.
Okay, time for the speed read from The New Yorker. There are new concerning revelations about President-elect Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, a decorated veteran turned Fox News host. Documents obtained by The New Yorker and corroborated by former colleagues reveal that Hegseth was forced to step down from previous jobs after he faced serious allegations of financial mismanagement, sexual misconduct, and other unethical behavior, including being repeatedly drunk on the job. The allegations trace back to his time running two nonprofit advocacy groups, Veterans for Freedom and Concerned Veterans for America. It comes just a few weeks after reports revealed that Hegseth was accused of raping a woman in 2017 while working at Fox News, and paid her to stay silent so he wouldn't get fired from his job.
Though, just to note, the police decided not to charge him with a crime in that sexual assault case, though he still did pay her to stay silent because he felt she would go public there with the allegations. Now, as far as these latest allegations here from the New Yorker report, they were compiled by employees from Concerned Veterans for America. They showed that Hegseth had to be carried out of multiple organization events because he was so drunk several times, including bringing his team to a strip club in Louisiana. Apparently, he and other male members of the team would divide women who work for them into people who like to party and women who don't like to party. He had to apparently be restrained from joining dancers on stage at that club incident in Louisiana. He was accused of sexually pursuing female staffers, creating a hostile work environment. Jill, I should note that we've heard this from several people who are close to Hegseth, who've worked with Hegseth at several previous organizations, multiple incidents where he's so intoxicated he had to be pulled out of bathrooms at work events, engages in inappropriate behavior. And so this is in line with some of the things that we've heard from several sources. Now, Hegseth's lawyer is saying that they're not going to comment here on what they call outlandish claims made by a disgruntled former employee, but he is already facing an uphill battle to be confirmed here. He was on Capitol Hill yesterday meeting with the senators who are going to be key to getting him through a confirmation process. He's already facing concerns that he is not qualified for the role. Defense secretary typically goes to someone who has been very senior in the military, someone who's been the CEO of an organization. Remember, at the Pentagon, you're overseeing several million people in a $1 trillion budget. And in the case of Hegseth here, already the allegations against him when it comes to much, much, much smaller organizations is that there was questionable behavior there. So he is facing criticism here on the womanizing, sexual misconduct, alcoholism. And it does harken back, Jill, to the first defense secretary nominee rejected by the Senate in modern history, John Tower. This was in the late 80s. George H.W. Bush nominated former senator from Texas, John Tower, and he was actually rejected. Why? For womanizing and drinking in his previous jobs. In particular, the drinking is a concern for any leadership position, but in particular for defense secretary, because as defense secretary, you are making calls in the middle of the night, in the middle of the day, on really sensitive military missions. that mean life or death. And so in particular here, any questions about competence and questions about alcoholism here, especially concerning for people going into that role.
Okay, on to another developing story we told you about yesterday from Reuters. Hundreds of Iran-backed fighters from Iraq entered Syria yesterday to help the Syrian government push back rebel groups that have taken over the country's largest city of Aleppo. The insurgent attack took the government by surprise. It marked the most significant shift in power in years amid the country's 13-year civil war. The attack was led by an Islamist jihadist group known as HTS that the U.S. has deemed a terrorist group. But HTS leads other rebel groups that the U.S. does support. Iranian-backed militia groups, in addition to Russian airstrikes, have been integral to the success of government troops fighting against these insurgent groups to keep the Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad in power. But in recent months, Russia's war in Ukraine and Hezbollah's war with Israel and Lebanon has weakened or distracted its allies, allowing the rebels to advance.
Yeah, the bottom line here is Assad's military is very weak. And so basically he has been held up in power here and able to continue to manage about 65% of his country, thanks to Iran, Hezbollah, Russia, doing a lot of the fighting and supporting his effort here. Hezbollah fighters have been some of the most crucial fighters the Syrian government has had here. But as they've been weakened, depleted, decimated by the Israelis in the past couple months, Hezbollah not really able to assist Bashar Assad here. So the Syrian opposition groups able to make a major move here, take over areas that they've been working to take over for the better part of 8 years here. Now it seems that Iran is turning to some of its other Arab terror proxies in Iraq and using them to support Syria. Iran trying to figure out how to navigate this because ultimately they are weakened, but at the same time, they really value the fact that they have free access to Syria. They're able to use Syria to push weapons over to Hezbollah and Lebanon, and the loss of an Assad regime in Syria would be particularly detrimental to the Iranian foreign policy strategy of having these powerful Shiite allies across the Middle East here. But Jill, the bottom line here in Syria is just, it is such a mess between Iran, Russia, Hezbollah, Syria, the US, the Saudis, the UAE, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, HTS, the Turks, the Kurds. I could go on, but I just named about 12 parties that are all fighting at times one another, Assad, the rebels. It is just so hard to keep organized. And at the same time, the loser here is just the Syrian people who, continue to watch their country just be destroyed.
Okay, switching gears from CNBC, we're still waiting on the shopping totals for yesterday's Cyber Monday. Americans were expected to spend a record $13 billion. And apparently that is because we are wired to overspend, especially during the holidays. That is according to a psychologist who told CNBC that the short-term gratification of giving gifts can often trump our desire to focus on long-term savings because long-term goals are more abstract. Is that what it is, Moshe? I didn't realize that was what was going on here.
I want something and I want it now.
But Moshe, you got to see firsthand the mayhem of getting all of those purchases out to customers. You were at the Amazon Fulfillment Center in Robbinsville, New Jersey yesterday. I highly recommend that everybody check out the Mo News Instagram account. There's tons of videos from your experience. But Moshe, tell us a little bit about it, including how you almost shut the place down.
I think we're overplaying it, but we'll get to that in 1 second. I would say it's actually amazingly organized, several 100,000 packages, just the machinery, the people working together. This is one of the robotic facilities, but even the robots we were looking at, they're like, these are 8th generation robots. We're already up to 12th generation robots. These are like old robots, Moshe, as far as what you're seeing, because effectively they have these little effectively Roombas with towers of product on them that are all basically navigating around one another so that to ensure they don't bump into one another in a 1 million square foot facility that is 28 football fields, 14 miles of conveyor belts. There's more than 3,000 people who work on the facility. And again, several hundred packages a day. Just fascinating to get the inside glimpse and kind of watch how the product gets put into boxes. follow those boxes, how the boxes get labeled. Jill, they have a technology there where the computer has satellite data, weather data, logistics data, and within a quarter of a second, based on the weight and size of the package, they determine whether it'll come to you, Jill, faster via truck or plane. And in a split second, the computer makes that call, prints the label, stamps the label on it, and then we followed it as it then went to this conveyor belt that was as far as the eye could see. And then the robotics are just shooting these packages out to various garages. And they're like, okay, slot 161, that's the Boston slot. Slot 162, that's the Cleveland slot. It's like boom, boom, boom. And humans are not involved in like most of the stuff that I was witnessing yesterday because it's basically the computers are all determining this stuff. So just super fascinating. But I did get to speak with a human being who was there yesterday. The VP of Fashion and Fitness, her name is Jenny Freshwater. And we spoke to her about a little bit of everything, as you might have seen on the Instagram feed. But one of the questions we had on this Cyber Monday was, what are Americans buying?
Apparel has been very strong. Also home, toys, and then electronics.
Jill, we know that based on the survey data that every American is set to spend an average of $1,063 this holiday season. And so obviously that differs by person, but that is the average sentiment based on the survey data. As far as almost shutting the facility down. So I was towards the end of the tour, and they were just, all these boxes were coming down the conveyor belt. Like they were ready to go. They're going out to the various ports, right? I mentioned Cleveland, Philly, Boston, etc. And I'm watching these boxes and like people ask me on Instagram, like, did you speed up this video? I'm like, no, like the boxes are moving that quickly. And so I was trying to lean in to like give people a sense, of where the boxes were going. I wanted to read some labels off. So I leaned over to try to read some labels, and then they like pull me back. They're like, Moshe, be very careful. There's this red wire that runs along all of the major conveyor belts that effectively, if you pull it in the case of emergency, it shuts the conveyor belt down, like distribution to all of those ports. Luckily, I didn't pull on the string. They warned me about it just in time. As I leaned in there, I didn't fall into the conveyor belt. I didn't open up any boxes, though we did see one box out of like thousands of boxes I saw that had accidentally opened up. I guess the robot didn't effectively tape the box. And I was like, hey guys, there's a box over here. The stuff's falling out of it. They're like, we're on it. The computer knows. Like it literally, the way it works is like they have to have all these boxes like in a single file line. And so if the boxes are sort of coming in multiple ones next to each other, it'll kick all the boxes out that are not in this sort of straight line. Just fascinating technology, Jill. And you look at it and you're like, Amazon's invested in all this technology. We could really use this stuff at like airports and some other places in society. My assertion is if Amazon was in charge of like baggage claim at the airport, we'd all have our luggage within like 2 minutes.
Moshe, it's funny that somebody asked you if you had sped up the video of the packages kind of going on the conveyor belt, because I thought the same thing. I was like, holy cow. And then the coolest thing you had made, you drew an arrow on the video where they had just these kind of panels that would push the packages out depending on where they were going. So it would be like North Dakota, one thing. It was wild just how quick it was moving. And my guess is how accurate it was moving, because I order from Amazon all the time and it's usually on time. Usually you get what you order.
It's amazing. I mean, the robotics and the automation and the fact that they also say like, Moshe, this ain't nothing. This is like 5-year-old technology. Like you just wait and see some of the newer stuff we have coming out there. It did come up in my messages and in my conversation with the folks at Amazon. Small businesses, ultimately they have the scale to be able to invest in technology, and it is, independently owned businesses are suffering because of it, especially brick and mortar shops out there, mom and pop shops. They did note to me that 60% of the sales during this period of time actually are small businesses selling via Amazon. So they do acknowledge that small businesses are important and they want to be able to support them. Obviously, I think there's some independently owned businesses that are hoping Amazon can keep doing more for them to support, given, again, they don't have the scale, the ability, the technology, the robots. Someone actually messaged me, Jill, who follows us in the Mo News community, who has a much smaller shop. She said, while watching your video, I was doing my inventory and putting together 2 packages of gifts of things people had purchased myself. It took me about 10 minutes, and I cannot imagine how many packages the robots were putting together over there at the Amazon facility in that same amount of time.
Okay, one thing you do not want to buy right now, certain eggs from Costco. This from Good Morning America. Thousands of organic eggs that were not intended to be sold to the public made their way to dozens of Costco stores in Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. The Kirkland Signature Organic Pasture-Raised 24-count eggs have now been recalled because of potential salmonella contamination. So far, no illnesses to report. More information on the recall is on the FDA's website. We'll link to it in our show notes. And switching gears here, some sad news to report. Elton John tells the public that he has lost his eyesight. The 77-year-old singer and musician said he lost his eyesight in his right eye in July after a severe infection. He has since lost all sight in that eye and even has trouble with his left eye now as well. Elton John said it has been affecting his ability to record music since he has trouble reading lyrics.
Yeah, so he actually retired after that nearly 5-year goodbye tour, the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road tour, back in 2023, but he has written the music for the Devil Wears Prada musical in London. He was recently asked about a new album. He said that going into the studio and recording, I don't know, because I can't see a lyric for a start here. I can't see anything. I can't read anything. I can't watch anything. He did have hopes earlier this year that his eye would recover, but so far he's having a lot of challenges there. So we are hoping that Elton can get back some of his vision soon.
And finally, according to the Oxford University Press, the word of 2024 is brain rot. So it's actually 2 words there, Moshe.
Yeah, not to be a stickler here, Oxford University Press, but brain rot is 2 words, but we'll accept it.
It is a term popularized by Gen Z and Generation Alpha. Brain rot is when you have scrolled the internet or your smartphone for so long that you experience digital overload from over-consuming trivial or unchallenging content. The publisher says use of the word jumped 230% from 2023 to 2024. But it was actually first recorded in 1854 when philosopher Henry David Thoreau wrote it in his book Walden, when he was just referring to oversimplification.
Yeah, we can't give Gen Z credit for this. Thoreau came up with the word brain rot. I feel like I've heard brain rot, Jill. Or wasn't that a version of also, remember those ads from the 90s when they were trying to convince us kids back in the day not to do drugs? And they said, this is your brain on drugs. And it was like an egg being fried on the stovetop. I
vividly remember those commercials. I feel like who grew up when we grew up has those commercials sort of seared into their brain. But I don't know if they called that brain rot or if it was just like the picture of the egg frying.
Yeah, all right. So ultimately here, brain rot is not something that happens to you if you listen to this podcast or you're a Mo News community member. It's all that other content on social media. So that's Oxford University, their word or words of the year, brain rot. Dictionary.com has its word of the year, demure, as in that trendy word from that viral TikTok that you saw the sound probably on. Very demure.
I think that's
how I prepare for work. That's how. Yeah. It was a TikToker named Jules LeBron used it. Very demure, very mindful. So that word demure still means what it was intended to mean: reserved, modest, shy. Apparently, Oxford was considering demure. Dictionary.com went with demure. They were also looking at the word lore, dynamic pricing, slop, and romanticy. Were the other words Oxford was considering for word of the year.
Moshe, I get lore, romanticy, although that's the first time I'm hearing it, dynamic pricing, but slop, what is that?
So slop apparently is being used significantly more than in previous years. It's not in reference to pig feed, like the slop that animals eat, but apparently the way that people use slop now, Jill, and we can use it on the podcast, is in reference to art, writing, or other content that is generated using AI, shared and distributed online in an indiscriminate and intrusive way, low quality, inauthentic, inaccurate, basically just like terrible AI images or writing that is now slop.
Last year, by the way, the word of the year, Riz. Remember charisma? Like what the kids say?
The kids are using, you got that Riz. We got that Riz here on this podcast as we continue into On This Day in History. On this day in 1967, a 53-year-old man, Louis Washkansky, Louis Washkansky received the first human heart transplant in Cape Town, South Africa. He would survive for 18 days. They had an issue there with the body rejecting the heart. And so they have since, in the past few decades, improved anti-rejection drugs to ensure that transplants take much better. Jill, a big anniversary for a computer game we love very much, Oregon Trail. 53 years old today, came out originally. The original Oregon Trail released on this day in 1971.
What did I say? That my family got syphilis on the Oregon Trail?
You tried a while back, for those who don't listen every day, to make a reference to the Oregon Trail. And there's like various diseases you get on the Oregon Trail. If you remember that game back in the day, typhoid is one. And Jill decided that syphilis was one.
I was just using
she believes
yes.
was something you got on the Oregon Trail, which, by the way, in real life, you might have actually gotten that Oregon Trail for the computer game. I don't believe that was an option.
No, especially not in elementary school when we were playing it.
Typhoid, pneumonia. I think those are the ones they went with. In other interesting technology history from our era, the first text message, the first SMS was sent on this day in 1992. Neil Papworth, a 22-year-old engineer, used his personal computer to send the text message "Merry Christmas" via the Vodafone network to a phone. It would be a few years until text messaging started to become more popular. In 1999, you were able to start texting between different phone services. It was still charging per text. I mean, I remember going to college then in the early 2000s and running out of text messages every month, and then having to pay 10 cents a text or 20 cents a text before text really started to blow up there in the mid 2000s. And finally, the answer to our clue at the top. Turning 30 years old today, Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song that he debuted on a Weekend Update segment on Saturday Night Live. And the lyrics basically revolve around all the celebrities that you might not know were either Jewish or half Jewish, or I think a quarter Jewish even. Harrison Ford, Paul Newman, David Lee Roth, etc. It was released as a single after the SNL debut and actually reached number 10 on the Billboard charts.
O.J. Simpson. Still not a Jew.
Not a Jew. Right. This song also makes note of some people who are definitely not Jewish.
Bruce Springsteen, not a Jew, but my mother thinks he is. Another one of my favorite lines, and a great song, Moshe, for us kids who celebrated Hanukkah. It's basically the only song we had, plus maybe dreidel. I mean, that was really it.
The American Jewish kids, it's hard to compete with Christmas. So thank you, Adam Sandler, for your contribution to the culture.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us in the App Store.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow. And again, don't forget on this Giving Tuesday to give to a charity near and dear to your heart.